And welcome to Open Mic Pain with Anthony and Wayne. This is our debut episode. Want to introduce you to the hosts. My name is Anthony Eugenio, and this is my co-host in crime, Wayne Russell. Tell everybody about yourself, Wayne.
Hey, how you doing, Anthony? I'm really excited to be doing this. We've been talking about this for a little while now, and I'm pumped that we're finally here. We've been doing comedy for a couple months now, and I'm really excited to start talking about it. I realized there was we realized that there was nothing out there about starting the open mic process, and I think we can fill that void pretty well.
Yeah, I agree. I remember when we first started doing comedy, I would absorb as many comedy documentaries as I could. I watched the Showtime one. I watched Jerry Seinfeld's documentary on Netflix. I Am Comic, I Am Road Comic, as much as I could. There is nothing about the open mic scene that I could find, at least. It seems like the very lowest level that they document is like a headlining club comic, which we would all jack off a bunch of homeless men to be at this point. So that's so far above where we're at. I mean, this has got to be interesting at this stage, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm a huge fan of the podcast Joe Rogan, of Tom Segura, Burt Kreischer, Theo Vaughn, Bobby Lee, and Santino, but they're all way, way ahead of us, and I know nothing about when they started out. I mean, I'm sure they might have talked about it here and there, but it's a whole different world than getting in front of a theater or Fenway Park like Burr did. It's a whole different world. It's a whole different type of comedy, really, which I didn't realize until we actually started going and listening. It's different. It's a different animal altogether, and I'm excited to dive into that.
Yeah, first, let's tell the people how this lovely same-sex hetero relationship started.
Yeah, so Anthony and I started working together. I think it was about 13 to 14 years ago at an auto parts store. And he admittedly probably hated my guts because I was admittedly a dickhead. Uh, but we eventually bonded over a lot of things, and one of those things was stand-up comedy. We both found that we had a love for it and an interest in actually trying it someday, but it took over a decade for us to actually do.
We called it our bucket list, and every time I think of bucket list, I think of myself as Morgan Freeman, like towards the end of my life, and I was like, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to do stand-up as Morgan Freeman when I'm 75 years old, and I'll die.
Yeah. And honestly, we'll get to this a little later, but that's exactly how I explain it to people when they find out I do open mic stand up, was that it was just going to be a bucket list. It was going to be a one and done. And so much for that. It's not so far. But yeah, I mean, I remember back in the day, me and you working together, closing, just me and you, and just throwing around ideas for bits. And I remember some of them. I don't know if you'd ever want me to say them. I could tell you a couple of them right now. But
Oh, let's hear it. Give me one.
well, one of them was you were taking a botany class. Do you remember this bit?
No.
So you were taking a botany class, and you came in one day, and you were like, the way plants inseminate other plants is essentially by jizzing on bees. And the bees go into the other plants and just rub their face right into the flowers. And that's a rough idea of it, but it was one of the funniest things. I've never heard anybody just think of plants like that. It was amazing.
I was doing a lot of fucking at the time. Yeah, that was the heyday. No, I to give a little behind the scenes, not too much, but a little behind the scenes, my career is in gardening. So I was taking classes at the time to learn the science behind it. And I always found it just hilarious how plants spread their genetics, because it's just a come for all for like a month straight of airborne cum. Like if you could imagine like Amelia Earhart, but froths of cum in the air. That's what plants do.
not for nothing, but I would love to see that bit come back. I would love to see 14 years later Anthony write that bit. I think that would be fantastic.
Yeah, maybe that's going to be a podcast special bit. Like we'll work on it together throughout the show, and then I'll debut it, and we'll put the whole clip out or something. That would be pretty cool.
That would be fun. And back in the day, we did work on that bit together just for fun. And you told me that I wasn't allowed to say what I said. I'll tell you off air.
Oh yeah, I don't know how your autistic brain remembers that, because that
a fun thing about one of the ideas that I came up with was the throat rubber joke, which
classic.
I haven't done. So we've been doing comedy for about 3 months now. I haven't done it in probably 2 months. I really have to go back to it and figure out how to make it work and not sound like an idiot. But that was one of the first jokes that I came up with, and that was with you. And I find it hilarious that was one of the first ones that I came up with. I started working with this guy, Pat. When he first started, we were at a work party, and we started talking about comedy. I was like, I would love to do it, and I already have a joke ready to go. And he's like, oh, yeah, what's that? And I told him that joke, and he laughed, and I was like, that's hilarious. And then on my very first 5-minute set, which was my very first time on stage, I did the joke. And it bombed. It was fucking horrendous. I don't think it was good. But it's funny looking back on that, thinking about when you were younger and you have all these ideas of this is what I'm going to do when I go on stage, and thinking it's awesome. And then, you might as well be up there with your pants down around your ankles.
Yeah, I remember, and this brings us into our next segment, which is how we started writing for our first show. So I remember when I first started going, all right, I'm going to go up and do an open mic. It was just about a year ago, actually. And I started writing stuff down that would happen to me in public that I thought could be a funny bit. I remember one of the first ones I threw out there that just got my comedy brain thinking was I was trimming my ear hair and my nose hair. And I went from my ear to my nose, and I was like, that's fucking disgusting. That's as gross as going ass to mouth. So that was the first congruity that I put together in a bit. And basically, to go off your point from before, when you write a joke before you've been on stage, you have this like vision of grandiose that you're like, oh yeah, and then everybody in the room's gonna laugh, and then the girl at the table on the left's gonna give me a hand job, and then the host is gonna high five me, and it's gonna be a fantastic set. And you really don't know fucking shit, unfortunately, because comedy on stage is only done from the crowd. You need the feedback.
It is, and there's been a few comics that have said this, but I think the first time I heard it was Joe Rogan, that it's really unfair as a comic that your art has to be done or has to be practiced in front of people. An artist can go paint and nobody will ever see their shitty paintings. A musician can go practice music and nobody will ever hear whenever they're flat or they're sharp. You can write jokes all day long, but you don't know if it's pitch perfect until you're actually in front of an audience and they look you in the eyes and laugh. And it's not a pity laugh.
Yeah, and because so far, in my very uneducated opinion, writing jokes is so much about your cadence and your setup than anything else. Because if you stumble over your premise in the beginning when you're setting up your punchline, it kills your punchline. And a lot of the time, comedy is just about misdirection. It's so much about a topic that you come through. You don't have to be like the most creative thinker ever. You just need to walk people down a path and then take them down a road they didn't think was there. So the most important part about that is you have to take them down the path, so they have to follow you. Meaning if you're saying like every other word and or you're putting pauses in, or your timing's not right, then they're not going to follow what you're saying. And when you're practicing at home, there's no way you're going to have proper timing because you need the crowd there for that.
Yeah, timing with a crowd is a lot different than I do driving. I drive a lot for work, so I practice a lot in the car, and there's a big difference practicing to nothing in the car than practicing. I'm sorry, than actually performing in front of an audience, where you might get a laugh where you don't realize, or you might have somebody say something, or somebody might make a face in the audience that makes you laugh, and it changes. It's really interesting the way just the smallest things can just change your cadence when you're on stage versus when you're in front of the mirror brushing your teeth, or in a car, or wherever you're practicing.
Yeah, and there's an energy to the audience too that I think is important for your cadence, where you kind of have to build up the audience to a certain energy level and then try to keep it there on rhythm in order for them to laugh at your other bits. Where if you take them down and you don't have a way to bring them back up, your punchlines will fall flat every time. So this is all a long way of saying that by the time I got on stage the first time, I sent out a joke that got complete silence. Well, we should talk about what brought you to your first set as well. Don't have to say where it was, but where would you start writing jokes and stuff? And then I'll get into the specifics of my jokes at my set. We'll go from there.
Yeah, so you were what brought me to my first set. So, like we mentioned earlier, doing a stand-up comedy set was always a bucket list thing for me. It was something I wanted to say, yep, I did that. When I was on my deathbed, I want to be like, I went on stage, I told a joke. You were the one that got me to do it. Anthony and I would always play PlayStation, when our wives went to bed, our kids went to bed. That would kind of be our unwind time. And we'd play PlayStation, we'd talk, we'd throw jokes around. And for years, we were throwing around premises of jokes and like, hey, what do you think? This would be funny, right? And this would be funny. And just working on it without, for me, any intention of actually doing it. I think you were a little more ahead of the game planning that, and actually more willing to go up than I was. And one night, I texted you and I said, hey, you want to play some Elden Ring or whatever it was at the time? And all I got was nope, and a picture of a stage, I think it was. And what went through my head, I was like that gif of the head just exploding. I was like, oh my God, he's fucking doing it. And I was so proud. Like I wanted to cry. I was so proud.
I know you said you thought you would drive to, maybe if you drive down, you'd be able to make it. It's like an hour and a half from you.
Yeah, from where I am, it's actually an hour and like 47 minutes or something like that. No way I would have made it, but
you thought about it.
If I could have, I would have 100% made it. I was super proud of you. But I didn't. I just sat on my bed playing Elden Ring, and
it's a great fucking game.
It's amazing. But little did I know, 4 days later, I would be up in Manchester, New Hampshire, shaking in my boots at a table on the side.
Good tease.
Telling you, I'm not going up. I'm not going up. I'm not going up.
That's right. Well, we're going to get into that full story. But first, let's go back to Portland, Maine, where a also scared little Anthony was about to make his first debut at what are they called? Damn, it's the first one. I should remember them. Yes, Field Notes. Yes, that's what it is. Portland, Maine, Field Notes. That is still to this day, I think, the nicest stage that we go on.
So I have to say, so we went up there a couple of weeks ago, and if that was my first open mic, what happened when we talk later about my first open mic, that never would have happened. That is like a legit stage. They do it right down there. Not saying others don't, but like that is the most legit looking and feeling stage that I've been on so far.
Yeah, they do the lights great.
I busted up the courage to go up and actually do that, because I would have. It was dark enough. I would have slunk out the side like a little bitch.
No, I am very big on think about the worst case scenario that can happen when you're about to do something. and then gauge your interest from there. So if I think about what's the worst thing that's going to happen at this open mic, it's that I'm going to forget my material and bomb and then go home. I mean, that's the worst that was going to happen. So it didn't really bother me, the setup to it. I was actually pretty pumped. It was such a nice stage. It was dark, host was nice. They're all there for comedy. It's in a bar, but it's downstairs, which is great because you don't have the bar talking over you.
So the night we went, there were two hosts. Do you remember if one of them was the host from your first night?
No. The host was his name's Mo, who was the host when I went there, and he's fantastic. Great guy.
The
Anime jokes.
The two that were there when we went were both awesome as well. So it sounds like they have a community of awesome hosts there.
Yeah, I actually remember one set I did by myself there. The host didn't show up, who was going to be a host I never met before. And somebody who was a comedian there hosted the show. And he actually ended up being a host, I guess, part-time now because he was our host a couple weeks ago. So he went up there just as a comedian and helped us one time. It was great.
Oh, that's pretty awesome.
Yeah. So back to the first set I did. So I was there at Field Notes in Portland, Maine, and I had been working on a bit called Artificial Intelligence Dick Pics. And you know what it was? And I'll be honest, I was listening to Louis C.K., I believe it was his Sorry Hour, and he comes out on stage, and the first thing that he says is, my favorite position is cowgirl, but I'm on top. And then he acts it out like he's on top. And it was so goddamn funny. I was like, you just should start by saying something ridiculous. So the first words that came out of my mouth when I went on, actually the first thing that happened when I came on stage is the mic cord came unplugged from the fucking mic and fell to the ground. And then I had to pick it up while everybody was like, we know this is your first time, so we know now you're going to fail. And
did they actually say this was your first time when you went up?
Yeah, which, again, if you're a host and you're listening to this, which is awesome, unless the person tells you, hey, tell them it's my first time, you probably shouldn't tell the audience it's their first time, because then everybody goes either fake laugh for you because it's your first time or already assume you're going to suck. So there's just no upside to that.
Yeah.
Got to keep it on a level playing field. With that. I can understand giving extra support when someone's trying something out, but we're not fucking playing T-ball here. I didn't go on stage the first time I hope I get some pity laughs. I was just trying to figure out if my jokes worked, and they didn't. So the first words I said was, the first dick pic I ever took, I had to take to a guy at a store to develop. So that was the first thing I ever said. And in my head, the 1,000 times I did it, everybody in the room laughed at the end of that joke. So I said it like I was like a dove was flying out of the hat at the end of it. I was like, the first dick pic I ever took, I had to take to a guy at a store to develop. And I wish there was laughter like that, but there was nothing. There were dead silence. And there was and then I did some priest jokes, and then I did some Teslas hate the gays jokes, all of which to silence. And there was a short-haired, purple-haired, you know who exactly I'm talking about person. And she was so pissed, like staring at me like I had 5 vaginas on my face. I think in the middle I said,
That's hey. Not the last time that would have happened to you, by the way.
Nope, definitely not.
We'll
get
to that time. Later, but
yeah, not the first, not the last time I've offended a short-haired, purple-haired, overweight, you know exactly who I'm talking about person. And she was looking at me like I punched her live-in partner in the face. And all I was doing was pointing out the fact that 2 men died in a Tesla and they were sitting in the back seat. The car was on autopilot, and then it crashed into a wall at 150 miles an hour. And if you don't think that the car killed them for being gay, then you're not paying attention. So that's all I said, and it was just I heard that you should tell the truth first time you do stand up. So I did. And they couldn't handle the truth, as Jack Nicholson said. Sorry. But anyways, I bombed. And then my next set that I had brings me to your first set because it was your very first set. So tell us all about it.
Yeah, so that was a Sunday night that you went there. And I knew on Monday morning that my time was limited for my cherry to be popped. I think you left with the bug, 100%. So for the last, whatever it was, 14 years that we knew each other, I had all these jokes in the back of my mind, plus all these things that come up when I'm talking to coworkers and stuff. You know, we talk about some outrageous shit, and I keep it in the back of my mind, or I did keep it in the back of my mind for the time when I thought I would potentially go on stage. And on that Monday, it all came flooding back into me like That's So Raven. I knew exactly. I knew that I had a very minimal amount of time before I had to go on stage and say something to somebody to try to make them laugh. So I started scavenging my brain for what am I going to say. And sure as shit, the Thursday came around. So 3 days later, you said, "Hey, I'm going to the Laugh Attic in Manchester, New Hampshire. You're coming with me." And I tossed it around in my head like, I don't know. I was trying to think of every excuse under the sun of like, why should I not go here? You know, my son goes to bed late, or he's not feeling well.
You tried all those, I remember.
Yeah, dude, there was every excuse under the sun. Eventually I was like, you know what? No, fuck this. This is my bucket list. I'm going to do it. So I texted my wife. She's like, yep, go ahead, whatever. And at that point, I had no excuse whatsoever. So, like I said, I drive for work. I spent every waking moment in between customer to customer practicing and trying to get a 5-minute set together. And I gotta say, I think I did pretty good. My delivery was absolutely horrendous. Wording obviously wasn't good. We can get into that later, as you say, economy of words. But I did it. And when we got to the Laugh Attic, I didn't even know what I was in for. It was a lot different, and it's still different than other mics that I've been to. That is a different.
Oh, she's unique.
It's a very unique atmosphere. For those of you listening that might have been to the Laugh Attic, you know, you get those stairs in the back that go up, and you wait for Ben to get there, and there's just a line, and people are just riffing and whatever. And it's a lot different than some of the other places we go to where you just walk in, you sit down at the bar, and you wait for the list to go out and you go write your name up. So Laugh Attic was an interesting one for me. I remember specifically one person poking his head around a corner and looking at the gentleman next to me and just whispering, "How big is your urethra?" And I was like horrified. I was like, what?
Yeah, I gotta say, I love everybody in the open mic community. That's why we're doing this, obviously. So I love you. But stop doing your fucking bits in the hallway at the goddamn Laugh Attic when you're over there. Because we're about to see your bits out there. So you're doing your B2B material for us while I'm waiting in a sweaty hallway for the host to show up. And it's just not the time for it. Try to organically be funny if you want, but you don't even have to do that. Just be you. Fuck.
That's another thing that I think we'll talk about down the line in another episode. But one of the best things you can do when you're waiting is to just be yourself and talk to people. I talk to people for a living. I'm a salesman. I go from customer to customer. Sometimes I cold call. I have to put on different hats every day and just be friendly and talk to people. I find that really hard in social situations. But for money, I do it pretty well. I do it pretty damn well. But in social situations, I'm a wallflower. And that's one thing that I wish I wasn't, because in the situation where you're waiting in line to go up on stage, that's the perfect place to do it. Have fun, make jokes and all that. Definitely get to know everybody in line. But we'll get to that later. But back to the topic at hand. We finally get the door open and we start walking up, and you write your name down, and I finally get up to that point where I'm going to write my name down. I'm like, oh, fuck.
Last chance.
And I did it. And I wrote my name, and I sat at the table. I think we were like 13th and 14th or something, 5-minute sets. So we're like an hour and a half in. And the whole time I'm like, I am not doing this. I am not going up on stage. There was some fun. There were a lot of funny people. There were some people that maybe not as funny. You go up there to try to work out your bits and your ideas, and sometimes they don't land, and you saw those. And the thing that made me go up, or the thing that helped me go up, I should say, was I went up to get a drink, and I met a person up there who had said they've been doing it for a very long time, and I never want to see anybody bomb by any means. I want to see everybody succeed. I want to see everybody get the biggest laugh they can. But when he told me that he had been doing it for a long time, I was like, fuck me. I am going to go up and absolutely die. I'm just gonna. I stand no chance. And it made it even worse that he went up a couple before you, which I was right after you. So he was 3 or 4 people before me. And when I heard his name and he went up there, he didn't do so hot.
He ate a bowl of shit-flavored ice cream.
Yeah, he didn't do so hot, and I felt really bad for him. But for me, it gave me a little bit more confidence. I said, okay, he's going up there. He's trying things. He's not doing so good. So for my first time, trying something for the very first time, I can definitely go up there and do it. And that's what gave me the courage. So as much as I hate to see somebody not do as well as they would hope, on that particular night, I was very thankful. Because if it wasn't for that, I probably would not be sitting here right now having this conversation with you.
Well, I forgot who said it. Some comedian said that nothing breeds comedians like bad comedy, and there's nothing truer than that, because nothing gives you more like if I went to my first open mic and it was Richard Pryor on stage, I would have never went on stage. I'm like, I can't do that. Like, that's above and beyond and magical. But when you see somebody go up there and they're like, I like deodorant, and just a fucking silence, it gives you a lot of confidence. Like, all right, I worked on my bits. I think I'll get something.
Yeah. And I got to say, though, even after that, I was very not sold on the idea of actually getting up. And you went up before me. And I think, I don't know if you heard me, but when you came off stage, I think I gave you a little fist pound, and I was like, I am not going up. And then we're sitting there. Ben did a little riff off of your bits, and then he called me up, and then everything washed away. And I walked up like nothing was wrong. I fist pounded Ben. I went up, put my drink on the stool, and I just went into it. And I never felt more comfortable than I did that moment. Even now, like, we had a really good night a couple nights ago at the Safe, and we're going to talk about that later. But I still did not feel as comfortable as I did in that moment, because I felt like this is what I've been waiting for. I didn't mention this earlier, but I've wanted to do stand-up since I was like 13. I was watching Comedy Blend on Friday nights, and it's just been a thing that I've wanted to do. And I'm now 36. I was 35 a couple months ago. So it's that 22 years later, I finally got to do something that I wanted to do. But yeah, it was amazing. And I don't know about you for your first time. I should ask you this. When I got off stage, I was fine. We got off, went to the bar, I paid my tab. The second we got out to the sidewalk is when I started shaking. Did you have any similar situations like that?
Well, so Yeah, I definitely was shaking right before I went on stage the first time, and I started thinking about, all right, just press the microphone up against your chin so you don't shake when you're holding the microphone. But it went away when I went
another
on.
Topic.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You at your fucking mic. We got to talk about that for sure. That's high up on my topic list. Was Wayne would hold the microphone like there were balls to cup underneath it. Like he would hold it. He would hold it just like a cock. Like he would two-handed Texas Twister style into that microphone. And he was like, Wayne was a DJ before, so he has DJ grip on that microphone.
Yeah. You know the difference between pink and purple?
No.
The grip.
That better be a fucking outtake.
That was I'm sure that's a wicked old joke, but I first heard that from Billy, my buddy Billy. Shout out to him if he ever listens to this, which he probably won't, but if he does.
Shout out, Billy. Yeah, no, that was funny. You were like when you have a friend in middle school that jacks his dick off like upside down with his dick, and you're like, man, that is just. I know that's how it naturally feels good to do it, but don't do it that way. Keep going. How'd the set go?
Was that?
How'd the set go, underhander?
Oh, so another reason that I'm sitting here is because the very first thing I said got a decent chuckle.
Sure did.
I'm not going to say because I still use it occasionally.
My favorite bit of yours, I think, all time, maybe. It's just quick, but I love it.
It's just a quick intro. That's all it is. It's a play on pronouns. And that got a chuckle, and that right there gave me the confidence to keep going. I've had a couple sets recently where if my first set went like that, I probably just would have walked off stage. But because of that first chuckle and then subsequent chuckles and actually a couple, I would say pretty decent, I'll say a rapturous laughters for the amount of people in there. I wouldn't call it rapturous, but I had some pretty decent laughs that made me have the itch to do it again.
There's a lot of golf. Like when you first start golfing and forever that you golf, you're terrible at it. But you just need one good hit. Like if you just get one good swing in where you hit the ball flush perfectly and it goes right down the fairway, you're like, I am the best goddamn golfer that has ever lived, and I'm going again. It's the same thing with comedy. Like if I say one good joke in a 5-minute set and everybody has a good laugh at it, I've completely forgot that I fucked up the first joke later on in it.
We had that conversation not too long ago because we record our sets, every single one, which is another conversation we'll probably have down the line.
Yeah, by the way, before we go too farther, at the end of this episode, we want to play you guys a couple clips of our first sets. Just figments of what you've heard in this story, maybe to get you going. So stay tuned for that. Sorry, Wayne.
Yeah, and they're absolutely horrendous.
So bad.
But I forgot what I was saying.
I fucked you all up.
You did.
Sorry.
You did.
Sorry, fucked you all up. I got excited about the clips.
Yeah, that's all right. We can move on, though.
People are going to play the clips.
Yeah. But, yeah, so, the first show for me went pretty good, and I was itching to do a second one. And problem for me was I went to Japan the next week. So I had... I wasn't going to leave my family for another night before I went to Japan, in case the plane crashed or I decided not to come back.
Sure. That is a great fantasy.
For anybody considering going to Japan, fucking do it. It's awesome. But I did eventually come back, and the week after, we started back up. So there was about 2 or 3 weeks in between, and that leads us to my second and your third time on stage. And before we go there, do you have anything else to say about your first or second time up? Because we didn't talk about your second time up. How did you find the Laugh Attic?
So I absolutely devastatingly hated it the first time I did it. I enjoyed it much more the second time I did it, but we were in a precarious situation where they have a bar in a separate room, but through an open doorway. And if you go up later in the night, all the comics who already went up go in that bar and they drink and talk. So the later you go up, the more the room is empty and the more people are just talking over your set and not listening. So
I think we should mention that was very true the first night we went, not true the second.
Yep. Like I said, we had a completely different experience the second time we went, and
the other half of that, Ben was very good, and unfortunately, it was right after. It was in between our sets where he yelled at the people being loud in the back because there was somebody in the audience actually complaining about it. He actually complained about it during your set.
He did, yeah. So that's how good my set went, that somebody in the crowd went, "Hey, stop talking over this guy's set." So that's so I had a little bit of didn't want to go back thereism. And I also, funny you mentioned that you went to Japan afterwards, because I remember thinking, like, I don't know if he's going to do it again. Like, because I went 4 days after my first time, so I got into a rhythm pretty quickly. And I remember when you went to Japan, I'm like, man, I don't know if I would have went again if I took like 3 weeks off from the first one.
Yeah, I don't want to say I didn't think about it, but I thought about going up more than I didn't. I did a lot of writing over there. I never used any of the stuff that I wrote, but when I was over there, I kept my notebook and I was taking notes and I was writing a shit ton.
Yeah, I remember. You had like a whole Japan 10 minutes.
Yeah, and none of there was maybe like a 2-minute joke that I think I still might do. That's funny, but most of it was definitely not. I'm sorry. I did do one at my second one. I did one, and it did not go good. It almost made the blooper reel of our promo.
It was let's get into it. Yes, I remember the vending machine bit. That was a good one. Tell us about your second set. So yeah, tell us about your second set.
So the second set was it was in Lowell, Massachusetts. It was called Coffee and Cotton.
Wow, that was your second set. I didn't remember that.
Yeah, that was my second set. And I was more nervous that night than I was the first night. And that's also the most nervous I've ever been.
I didn't know that. I thought you were more nervous the first night than you were Coffee and Cotton.
Nope.
Interesting.
The first night, the second Ben said my name, I was good. I was literally shaking. I could see the microphone shaking in front of my face when I was talking.
Yeah, we have a blooper for Coffee and Cotton in our promo video. So if you take a look at that, you'll see what Wayne's talking about.
Yeah, I did the... that was the throat rubbing joke that did not go over well, and I think it was the crowd. I'm sorry, it was not the crowd. It was definitely me, because that's never done a particularly good. But I feel like the crowd didn't appreciate it more than another crowd might have.
I completely agree. Coffee and Cotton is one where they say right before they go on stage, like, don't have to be clean, but don't be too dirty, which is real tough because you never want to hear any restrictions on your comedy, because then you start second guessing, like, oh my God, like, how many fists can I say go in how many assholes? Do I get a half of one? Do I get a finger? Like, well, how deep can I go into the comedy? And then you just fuck yourself all up. And, but that's a beautiful place. And to be fair on them, I've seen some heinous shit there. So I don't think they really have too much of a limitation.
Yeah, no, I've definitely seen some real dirty comedy there. I've been there a few times. I've only gone up there once. And I've heard the host questioned about it, and he goes, I don't fucking know. That's their rules. So, I get it. It's not really a bar. It's basically a coffee shop, I believe. So I don't think they want to be known as like a Lowell dive bar or whatever. And they do draw some really good talent there. I had a blast. The last time I went there, I didn't get to go up because the list filled up. but I brought a friend of mine there, and we watched the entire show and had an absolute blast because there were so many funny people going up on stage.
Yeah, the scene from Lowell connected into Manchester, because they're kind of the same group of comics, tend to float between those two, is the strongest that I think that we see. And we've been to, obviously the main market of Portland, and the Boston market of the couple places that we've been to that we'll talk about. But yeah, I think our favorite as far as camaraderie, support, and just kind of the level of comics that go there so far, at least for us, has been the Lowell Manchester, at least for me.
Yeah, I agree. I can't speak to Portland as much as you. You've been there, 3 times? I've only been there once.
Yeah. 3 times.
The Jamaica Plain, I've been there twice. I didn't find it as supportive. I'll say it right now. I think the Lowell Manchester market, I see a lot of the same comedians bouncing around those. Not necessarily every single night that I'm at those places, but just scattered. And everybody is, for the most part, very supportive. They want to see everybody succeed. You're always getting like, hey, good job, fist bumps, good job. I've had people try to give me different tags or ideas for things like, hey, I heard you talking about this. Did you know this? Here's a fun fact about that. Maybe you can, and that's really cool.
There you have it, folks. So that was me and Wayne's first couple sets. We want to thank you guys for watching our first episode of Open Mic Pain with Anthony and Wayne. Look out for our second episode where we tell you about the lows and the highs of our comedy career up to that point. And, we just want to thank you guys very much and let you know that every episode is a step towards the quest for laughs. Thank you guys very much. Have a good night.
I can tell you, I researched the place before I came here, and I'm very excited that this thing is not counting down my set. I would much rather have Ben's finger.
Every time we end the movie, there's a 50-50 shot when you ejected the tape that I was just going to eat the tape. You'd be pulling that shit out like a ribbon dancer.
I bought you the Humane Trap. Like, what the fuck are you doing? And he's like, you mean the drown box?
VHS porn dads, they were like the liquor dads. They draw the little line on the liquor bottle. They did that because they couldn't remember where they finished drinking. The VHS porn dads, they remember exactly where they finished.
Then both of them got in the back seat. The car at some point figured out what was going on, and it went 140 miles an hour into a wall and killed them both.
You know that old adage where they say if you want to give a dog a pill, you gotta rub its throat and it'll swallow and all that shit? What they don't tell you about that, it doesn't work at once.